IDF says is to seize strategic areas. Does the U.S. fully support expanding this war?
Oh, hell yes, we do.
We expand the destruction of Hamas, the ending of Hamas. We support a future for the people of Gaza that is free of Hamas and full of opportunity. That's what we support. And this is a group that came across on October 7th and carried out one of the most vile series.
It says he wants to end wars, but Israel's prime minister the president says he wants to end wars, but Israel's prime minister has said he is expanding this ground operation inside of Gaza. The IDF says is to seize strategic areas. Does the U.S. fully support expanding this war?
We expand the destruction of Hamas, the ending of Hamas. We support a future for the people of Gaza that is free of Hamas and full of opportunity. This is a group that came across on October 7th and carried out one of the most vile series of attacks, kidnappings, rapes, murders, and hostage-taking that we've ever seen. That said, we also support an end to the conflict.
Be sure to hit the bell so you never miss an
A ceasefire. We don't want people obviously suffering as they have, and we blame Hamas for that, but nonetheless they're suffering. And so we are actively engaged. Even as I speak to you now, we are actively engaged in trying to figure out if there is a way to get more hostages out through some ceasefire type mechanism.
Yeah.
We're not going to do anything to undermine Israel and its security, but by the same token, if there is a possibility here to find a way forward that frees more hostages, including those who are alive, but also the bodies to their relatives, and potentially bring about an end to this war.
Bodies of relatives as well. It's pretty sad. But families of relatives have been trying to get the bodies back. It's almost like Hamas is using their dead corpses of their family members as hostages, as bargaining tokens in themselves. So it just shows you the level of depravity and the kinds of people that are Hamas that Israel's dealing with here. But anyways, I digress.
In a way that puts the people of Gaza on a pathway of peace and prosperity and being free of Hamas. We're going to explore that. We think we've made some progress, but there's more work to be done. Ambassador Witkoff is working on that on an hourly basis. It's something we're all very focused on and continue to be very supportive of. And I hope we'll have good news soon in that regard, but I think some impediments remain.
Are you asking Israel to slow down this military push? And the Qatari prime minister told Fox News that there was a deal being put together for all hostages or many hostages to be released after Idan al.
If they release the hostages at this point, it'd be good for Hamas. I mean, it's just like extra fire to the fuel. And they're all basically martyrs that are alive. As long as they cling on to their hostages, it's a constant burning reminder of October 7th.
Xander, that American-Israeli was released recently, but then the Israeli military bombed a hospital, killing 70 civilians, and everything went sideways.
The suffering of October 7th never ended as long as there's still hostages in Gaza.
Is that your understanding of what happened? It was this lack of care of collateral damage?
No, the way I would characterize it is that this war could end immediately, and Israel's made that clear. It could end immediately if Hamas surrenders and gives up their weapons and demilitarizes and releases all the hostages, including the deceased ones. They did that, this conflict would end. That's been true from the very beginning. It's been true for months now. They're the ones that have chosen not to accept that offer. That said, we continue to work and do everything we can through diplomatic channels and private means to bring about an end to this conflict in a way that ends Hamas and provides...
Just to be clear, Hamas is they're the ones making demands here. And it's really unwarranted. They aren't in the position to be making demands. Let's just say they don't have any cards, but I mean, at this point, they don't even have a country. It's basically been flattened in Gaza, so rebuilding can only take place once the war is over, basically once Hamas is eliminated.
People of Gaza the opportunity at a prosperous and peaceful future. That also ensures Israel's security. So we're working on that, and we've never stopped working on that. We've never stopped taking efforts to make that possible, and that continues. Even as I speak to you now, there are people working on that. So we're going to continue to do that, and that's the outcome we want to see, and hopefully the sooner the better.
Well, the president has said Prime Minister Netanyahu didn't want to end the war.
That's not
the views are quite.
Well, I think what the
Netanyahu doesn't want to end the war and allow Hamas to continue their reign of terror. He'd be happy to end the war as long as Hamas is no longer a threat or a leader in the region. As long as they don't have any territory there's no war, but the war will continue until they've been eliminated, unfortunately.
And
that's just the way.
I think what the president is saying is he doesn't want to end the war until Hamas is defeated. This is a group that is a threat. If an ember survives, it will spark again into a fire. And that is the view of Hamas. There is no.
That's what we saw with ISIS.
Future. There can be no peaceful and prosperous Gaza as long as Hamas governs it by rule of arms. And that's a fundamental truth. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't some way that we can achieve that through a ceasefire.
Hamas completely. They can't be a military organization anymore, a political one for that matter.
And some peace mechanism, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Ending Hamas, ending its governance of Gaza, ending the conflict, freeing all of the hostages, including the bodies of those who have passed away and been killed and murdered by the Hamas.
And, destroying the terrorists. They're not going to allow these terrorists to maintain any power on the border of Israel.
Terrorists. And then beginning the work of a future for Gaza and also of ensuring Israel's security. That's always been our goal. That remains our goal. And that's what we continue to be focused on. But in the absence of that such agreement, we anticipate that Israel will continue forward with their operations. But that doesn't mean we stopped working on trying to achieve a peaceful outcome that also protects Israel's security and ends Hamas's governance of Gaza so that Gaza can have a free and prosperous future moving forward. That's what the president wants to see as the end goal here. That is the end goal, and that's what we're working on through every means at our disposal.
Simple. If you notice one of these signs, then it's time to...
Thank you for watching. I'll watch another clip here and we'll be done probably. We'll wrap it up. So we got going here. Oh shit. I said little shit. Week's gotta take a little looky here. And I'm like shit dead ass. Shit. Well, let's see what old Mir has to say.
These are breaking news and very important news. Maybe the best news since the war has begun. So let me break it down to few things. First of all, if you've been following me on Telegram, and I'm going to talk about it.
Got a mirror here.
You know that Gideon's Chariots operation is underway.
Yes, sir.
Remember, I shared with you the map.
The IDF just started a new fucking operation, which is crazy. They just started this fucking new phase of the operation, I guess. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, they're sending like 60,000 people into Gaza to free Gaza. So we'll see.
And the whole plan of first getting the civilian population from the northern part all the way down to the south to the humanitarian zone that we are creating. That's where we are going to create areas where we will distribute by American companies.
And another thing, like, they talk about, like, the civilians in Gaza, but they gave them so long, like, even at the beginning of the operation, like, this has been going on for years, but... And before that, really, but they gave them a humanitarian corridor, they gave them weeks and weeks, and they kept extending it, and they gave them ceasefires to evacuate, and it's really not that big of a country, it's like, you can see across Gaza, it's just a tiny strip of land, and they couldn't leave, so now they're the biggest victims in the world, because they can't eat, but, like, they've been given all this warning, all these opportunities and chances. It's just crazy. Well, anyway, let's continue.
Humanitarian aid, food, and medication, everything. And once the civilian population is cleared, this is when we start the very powerful...
Yeah, because they're in the way. They're just basically human shields right now for Hamas, so they're in the crossfire. Hamas wants to keep them. That's why they were telling them to stay. But that's just so that they can use them as a human shield, because they obviously don't care about the humanitarianism at all. In fact, Hamas is only caring about saving themselves right now. Their main priority and objective is they want peace, but they won't just declare peace. This could all be over if they just declared the war is over. But instead, they're trying to evacuate themselves to other countries and get free access or immunity to leave. So, I mean, they want like refugee status, their leaders, but not for the people of Gaza. They just want to leave with their families and wives and abandon the people of Gaza. But IDF wants to clear them all out and help Trump to build the Riviera of Gaza, Gaza Riviera. Really, the IDF just doesn't want the threat of Gaza on their border any longer. Obviously, we saw what happened with October 7th, and they're not willing to take the risk again with these irresponsible. Well, it was irresponsible before because they gave Gaza so many chances. They gave Hamas so many chances, and they played softball for a long time. But now you can see Netanyahu's just really determined. His foot's on the gas, and he's going to clear Gaza of basically depopulate it and move their population elsewhere because you can't really trust them, at least unsupervised. There'd have to be at least an IDF presence there moving forward, or an American presence, I guess, Trump Gaza.
Ground maneuver with tanks and artillery, and this is when we are going to destroy everything above the ground and under the ground.
Yes, sir.
So in the past 48 hours, we began
in Gaza. It's
massive strikes from the sea, from the air, and from the ground, but from outside of Gaza, artillery.
And they're sending
in order
tanks
to do two things. One, to encourage the civilians to leave, and to hit some key terrorists in the area.
Oh, they got a lot of
killed Yahya Sinwar's brother. We just heard reports that they found his body. We killed Yahya Sinwar's other brother, although they claim that he came back to life, but that's baloney.
Okay.
And we've killed the number 2 in Hamas in Gaza, which is Ahmad Shabana, who is the brigadier general and the commander of the Rafah brigade, who was hiding with Mohammed Sinwar in the same underground tunnel that we bombed on, I believe, Wednesday or Tuesday, actually, 5 days ago.
You got to get the underground.
So all in all, we're hitting the top.
And they're just using like bunker busters. They're using like deep penetrating explosives to get the terror tunnels. So they're not like hugely devastating for surrounding structures, because they're mostly like angled at like ground penetration. So it's like a rod. It goes into the ground. The explosion is angled like into the ground, not in the surrounding area. So, but I mean, what hasn't been bombed in Gaza?
Leaders of Hamas in Gaza, we're hitting a lot of terrorists, and we are causing mass exodus of the Gazans from the northern part to the south. Over 300,000 already left.
That's the goal.
In the past
get them all to the south, and then just get them out. Get a humanitarian corridor, just whatever you got to do, get them out and relocate them to somewhere safer. You know what I mean? It'd be just a good thing for everybody. And then once there's no more human shields in Gaza, it's just the terrorists. Eventually, they just need to surrender. We have to remember they still have hostages, and that's the reason that's actually continuing the war. It's not like the hostages are bargaining tokens at this point. I mean, Israel's made it clear they're willing to just wipe out Hamas regardless of if the hostages are in the crossfire, because Hamas is using civilians as human shields. They'll use the hostages as human shields till the last Hamas soldier. I mean, but they're not really bargaining tokens. Basically, if they didn't have the hostages, Israel would be less motivated to go in there, that's for sure, because part of it is freeing the hostages, but it's just provoking the war. It's like the opposite of a bargaining token, if you think about it, because they're actually just provoking Israel's hostility. Because, I mean, think of it. They still have their people there. It's like a constant reminder of January 6th, or October 7th, sorry. But it's a constant reminder for, like, Israel, if you think about it, because they still have people that haven't been freed. So there's still people suffering from that day. And so they don't have any reservations about making Gaza suffer. I mean, it's just crazy. They still have those hostages, so Israel's going to do whatever they have to do, but they're not going to let the terrorists remain capable of taking hostages like that. It's just
moving ahead
absurd.
With the first one. Now, Israel gave Hamas an extension of 24 more hours, which is until midnight today, Israel time, midnight. And this is when, if by then there is no progress for a deal, Israel is going to move with the most powerful ground maneuver ever.
And that's going to happen because, just ignore that.
It's going to move with the most powerful ground maneuver ever. Tens of thousands of Israelis troops, IDF troops, are already waiting.
Yeah, they're going to send 60,000 troops into Gaza here soon. Well, there's already tens of thousands in Gaza. They're trying to hold territory and take it over, and to push the Gazans into small strips of land where they can oversee humanitarian corridors outside of the country to places like Egypt and places that will allow refugees and, and take them in, which is like fair. A lot of European countries do that. Now, I wouldn't say European countries would take in Gazans from a war-torn country. I mean, they would, but I wouldn't say that would be ideal because these people want to be free in the Middle East. And generally, they don't want to leave Gaza, but it's not a habitable place anymore. It's uninhabitable. Um, it's just uninhabitable. There's roads. So, I mean, it's one thing to be patriotic about your country if you have a country, but if there's a nuclear war or something, and it's just eviscerated and there's just rubble left, I mean, come on, at a certain point, I guess, you could say the same about Ukraine. They're not really abandoning. They'll just throw infinite lives at that war until the entire country is just rubble and destroyed and most of their youth are dead. But anyways, I digress. Let's just continue
the
here.
right moment to get the command to make the move. Now there's a twist in the plot. More and more and more reports are coming that Hamas is actually not interested in the Witkoff outline because they understand that dragging their feet caused them to lose everything, to lose their own leaders and their own families. So Hamas understands maybe this is the time to actually negotiate the complete end of the war.
Well, they should just give up then.
You understand what I'm saying? We're not talking about another deal. We're not talking about 2 months of ceasefire or 45 days.
Yeah, because like with the ceasefires, it doesn't matter if they release the hostages. Israel's promised a ceasefire, but they're also going to finish the war. And they said even if they give them a ceasefire to allow a humanitarian corridor or to free the hostages, it doesn't really matter because they're going to go back in and they're going to continue this campaign against Hamas.
Actually, are already going to talk to us about the end of the war. They want 2 things. In exchange for all the hostages, they want us, take a look, they want us to allow all of their leaders to leave safely with their families. And they want guarantees that we will not kill them. That's all they care about. They don't care about the Gazans.
Their leaders.
The kids, the women, the elderly. They care about their own families and themselves. And then they say...
you should care about
disarm.
That, but they say that, Israel's killing all these civilians while they hide behind their own civilians and they use them as human shields. So it's like they, on one hand, beg for sympathy and accuse Israel of all this devastation when they're the ones doing inhumane tactics and things. The IDF's been very humane and it does knock strikes before it strikes a building. Not that there's many buildings left in Gaza now, but they'll knock twice on the rooftop for civilians to leave. I mean, when they strike command centers, a lot of times even they'll do this. And when they take out leaders in Hamas, they do this. Anyway,
now Israel is saying, but disarming is fine, but you don't disarm in stages. Immediately. Let go of your weapons. We will allow the leaders...
Immediate end of the war, cessation of hostilities needed with Hamas. They just need to give up.
Which means
cut losses.
Our military pressure works.
It's not going anywhere.
Which means that from the very beginning, military pressure should have been the option.
Yeah, it should have. And that absolutely... I mean, when I went to Israel, it was like they were almost like at peace with Gaza, and the whole time Hamas was plotting against them, and they saw it as weakness because they only respond to force, and they're a violent people. I mean, Hamas, they're a terrorist organization, but Israel was very peaceful with them on their border. They didn't start hostilities. Hamas did on October 7th, but before that, Israel treated them with like kid gloves, and they're very, they were just very not aggressive towards Hamas in any ways. They were peaceful, but obviously once that happened and they were exposed to the heinous evil of Hamas, they were forced into this war. And so we shouldn't complain and see it as like a provocation on the part of Israel. They're just trying to destroy Hamas for no reason. I mean, it's like they lived with them for years. They treated them as equals, and they tried to, they tried to be stewards and neighbors with Hamas and give them everything that they needed. Well, let's remember, Israel controlled Gaza before Hamas did, and they actually gave it up. They controlled it. They gave it up. They gave it to Hamas. Essentially what happened, without meaning to. Once Hamas took power and they elected the terrorists in Gaza, it just became an unstable situation. It became more untenable after Hamas started launching rocket strikes on Israel and rocket attacks. We saw that a lot before October 7th. So there was definitely a boilover. There was a lead up to it. But Israel controlled Gaza. They just left. They gave it up. Anyways, it's just, obviously it's become a whole cluster fuck, in Gaza. It's just not good for anybody. It'd be good for the war to end, but we'll see what happens. I think one way or another it will end, most likely through violence, though, and military victory.
Liberals, they convinced then the Biden administration, that Israel should stop the war in order to get the hostages. They convinced those liberals in America that if America will hold weapons...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's how they're hiding behind human shields, because they were trying to do that, but that tactic's not going to work. That's not going to fly at all with the IDF. They're going to flatten Gaza. Even if they don't get their hostages back, they're going to eliminate the threat, essentially. Because they see it as, like, at all costs, at all costs, the damage has been done, more or less. They'll try and get back the hostages if they can, but the only ways to go in there, really, it's not going to happen through peace or negotiations.
From Israel. And will threaten Israel in the UN, then we will have a deal. Whereas us, we've always said it's the opposite. Hamas doesn't understand appeasement. Hamas doesn't understand.
They're not looking for peace, and you shouldn't negotiate with terrorists like Biden was doing. And that was a big fault of Biden. They should have dealt with this a lot sooner and a lot more harshly, I feel like, and it would have been dealt with by now. I mean, peace can only come after their securities in Gaza, and they've secured the land where terrorists, it can't just become a terrorist hotbed again. They can't let terrorists again. This wasn't just in a vacuum. I mean, these people were terrorists. They controlled Gaza. They controlled everything there. They were like in a lot of parts of Gaza, it was like part of the community, but they were nasty people. They attacked Israel, and they would have done it again. They wouldn't have stopped, really, if Israel didn't respond. If Israel hadn't responded, they wouldn't have stopped. So they really have to eliminate and root out this evil. Anyways, let's continue.
Giving up. Hamas understands power, strength. And that's exactly what we see right now.
That's all they understand is force.
People who live in southern Israel say that the bombing in Gaza right now is even worse than the beginning of the war. They say that they've never heard such a pace of bombing all across the Gaza Strip. Hamas is being decimated.
Sorry again. They say every 2 minutes there's massive explosions. Just booms, rockets going off, things of that nature. It's all one-sided now. It's not really like Hamas is able to fire back. They're getting rooted out. They're getting completely rooted. And Israel is claiming they're even close to securing Gaza completely. They're close to ending this. They just need to finish it, really. They just need to push through and finish it.
And they are now willing to move ahead and negotiate the end of the war. I hope you understand. We're no longer even in the Witkoff outline of only releasing part. And they understand that the longer they drag it, Israel will not commit to end the war. No matter what. Even in the Witkoff outline, we reserve the right to resume the war. So as long as Israel reserves the right to resume the war, and Israel indeed resumes the war, because we've done that twice, they understand that they're going to lose everything.
And after any proposed ceasefire or anything like that, Israel would just get right back to it after, because if they negotiate a ceasefire over something like hostages, they'll hold up their end. But eventually Israel's going to have to deal with the problem one way or another. And Netanyahu said this. They're going to finish the war one way or another, through peace or through military strength. And it's trending towards military strength more than anything now. Negotiations just aren't working with the Hamas leaders. It's just not working.
But before they really truly lose everything, which means they lose their own life and their families' lives, they understand that they need to reach a point where they can freely leave. This is an amazing thing. Amazing thing. There's a chance that we're going to see an important visit. We're not sure. Maybe J.D. Vance, Vice President, might come after the Pope's inauguration. Maybe not. But I'm telling you, the next 12 hours, maybe even less, by the time you see this video, even half the time, Hamas will have to reach a crucial decision.
Yeah. We see more and more intensifying encounters with the IDF in Gaza as the situation there escalates. It's shot up.
Crucial decision.
They're going to war.
Witkoff outline, which is releasing on the spot 10 living.
Basically tomorrow they're going to go in there, hellfire, fire and brimstone. Tomorrow's the day, I'd say. That's what the IDF's been saying. Tomorrow's the deadline, though.
Hostages and half of the dead ones in exchange for 45 days of ceasefire, and yet Israel reserved the rights to resume the fire.
Oh yeah, this is a key point. So they'll give a ceasefire after a hostage exchange. They'll hold up their end of the deal. That's part of negotiations. But if Hamas is still in power by the time that ceasefire ends, and they don't disarm themselves, Israel's just going to go back in. IDF's going to start this up again. So they should be orchestrating humanitarian corridors out of there, because so far the blockade hasn't changed. The aid blockades remain in place, and it's going to continue as long as military operations are carried out inside of Gaza.
Or Hamas will say,
it's just not safe to
there's
be
no point of
bringing in
dragging
aid.
it for too long. We're losing our lives, we're doing the lives of our own families. Why don't we just negotiate the end of the war right now, and that's it? The Prime Minister's office just issued an interesting press release. I've never seen it before. They said that we are actually willing to negotiate with Hamas either the Witkoff outline or the complete end of the war, which means
that'd be ideal.
Everybody understands that that's on the table. Phenomenal. Now let me.
But is it on the table
Over
for
the
Hamas,
last
though?
4 weeks, we've lost about 6,000 subscribers on Telegram, and it's not because people
Hamas
leave.
really wants this war to end. But I mean, are they really willing to
Browser
commit to
and
a
immediately
serious
see my
ceasefire
Telegram.
or cessation of
Telegram
hostilities?
stopped it.
I
Now you
don't
need
think
to
so.
download the Telegram
Those people
app
just live
on
for war. We'll have to see.
iPad, but on your desktop.
Oh, grifting.
Writing, I can't see you again, I can't find you again. It's because Telegram.
Anyways, I just wanted to give
You
this little
want
update.
to know what is happening and when it happened. The most crucial period since the war started right now. You don't want to miss what's going on. All right? Another thing I want to tell you, God performed a miracle. A miracle. This unexpected, smaller, thinner book that we just came up with. Content such as the one we have. You for it.
Well, anyways, gang, I'll leave it there. It looks like about everything. I just want to give this brief update on the situation because things are about to get serious in Gaza, it sounds like. But thank you for watching. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. And I'll be doing more long-form contents and more takes like this in the future. And I'll catch you all around the next